Let me just join by indicating how I'm happy to be part of this conversation and to really collaborate with Adam. Dominica is well situated between two French territories on the North Guadeloupe and on the South Martinique. So we feel like we're very close with the French territory. So we're happy to know that the relationship between Ika and Adam is formally linked, and we can share our technical services as well as discussion. I'm happy also to be able to share our experience. And as you're aware, or some of you may be aware, that Dominica, together with 4 other territories within the region, are implementing a CBF, which is the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund Eco-Based Adaptation Project, or Vetiver project for short. And in Dominica, we are utilizing Vetiver as a green engineering tool, more in terms of land stabilization to reduce erosion on slopes. As you can see, the first slide that we have there, you could see the use of Vetiver along the roads as part of our hillside farming, and in some areas to stabilize slopes. So I will give a little insight in terms of why we chose some of the communities that we're working with, as well as a little bit on Vetiver, the grass as a good green engineering tool. But before I go on, I just want to share really our realities. 3 days ago, I think around the 6th of November, we had a tropical storm or depression that actually damaged significantly the community that we are working with, and that is Petit Soufrière and Saint-Sauveur. And if you look at the picture on the right, this is a shot we took whilst we were preparing to install some of our Vetiver along the slopes. And on the left is what is left of it after a few inches of rain on Sunday. So you could see a serious change in the landscape. And to give you a better idea of what happened, if you notice on the left-hand side, a landslide took pretty much part of the hillside, and it cut across 2 of the main roads going into the Petit Soufrière village, and that landslide went from the ridge all the way to the coast. So that exactly what the project that we're working on is trying to protect. This landslide is actually exacerbate that problem. Now, what is interesting on the right, if you notice a circle there, this is a Vetiver installation that we did under the project, and I don't know if it's by divine intervention or the mere nature of what we are doing. If you notice,
sorry to cut you a bit, Mr. Coipel. If you could just space yourself just a little bit for the interpreters, please. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me? Is it better?
Yes.
Right. Okay. As I was saying, the picture on the right in the circle, this is an installation, a Vetiver installation just below the house. And if you notice, the landslide did not disturb it too much. And we are hoping that it really tells the story of the importance of the use of Vetiver on the slopes as a green engineering tool. I will now do a little bit just to give you a little background, or just to give you a little description of what we're speaking of in terms of Vetiver. And we know that it is widely used in terms of soil erosion control, in some cases towards slope stabilization and soil and water management. We have various names. In some countries, grass, Vetiver, sweet root, I think in Grenada. In Dominica, from time to time, you hear people saying Vetiver. It's a grass, and it's tropical and as well as subtropical plant, and it grows well in very sunny conditions. The important thing is the roots grows in some cases up to 10 feet deep, and because the type of grass, it suckers quite a bit, and that helps it to have greater mass, and that could trap as much as possible soil and to hold the soil or stabilize soils on sloping lands, especially where you have soils become very loose in some cases. It's also good to note, worth noting, that it has very powerful phytoremedial actions. That means it can treat contaminated soils. It is known to remove heavy metals and from certain soils.
Sorry to cut you. Some persons are saying that the slide is not moving, but I am seeing it moving. Is anybody having that challenge?
It's moving on our end.
Okay. So it is moving. I think just one person is having a bit of a problem that it's stuck. You might need to come in and go out and come back in. Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, Mr. Coipel.
No problem. Another important attribute that we can link with vetiver, it's a C4 plant, and basically it does not compete with other food crops, and we'll speak about that in a bit. And it's also known to absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and to fix it into the soil. Now, because of the nature of the root or root growth, in very quick time, it can grow, as we indicated earlier, it can grow as deep as 10 feet. And because of the nature, in terms of the fibrous nature of the root system, it holds the soil well. And as I indicated earlier, the plant grows into clumps, and this could trap soil, loose soil that may be eroded on those slopes. In some cases, it provides an opportunity to have this sort of footpaths, because it traps the soil. So along the contour of the slopes, you can actually assist in developing those footpaths. And in this particular slide, we want to indicate the importance of how we can complement the use of this green engineering with the gray engineering. And the picture says it all. What you see here is the use of gabion baskets to help in terms of land stabilization, but along the slopes, you would see the clumps or the lines of vetiver grass growing along the contour. So it's complement very well the gray engineering, and we wanted to make sure that people recognize that we're not only going to indicate the use of vetiver in certain areas, or vice versa, the use of only gray engineering. We would like to see more and more of the integration of the both engineering towards slope stabilization. I mentioned earlier that the vetiver grass is a non-invasive species, meaning that it will not be propagated by seeds or seed distribution, and therefore it can be controlled in an environment that it is established. So it's something that is an important factor that we have to note. And I think vetiver in itself grows very well in our tropical climates, and is very well suited for our certain conditions in most of these small territories within the region. I just want to touch a little bit on the whole installation, but it's important for us to start with the issue of not just going to harvest vetiver each and everywhere, but to really move into the mode of establishing vetiver nurseries. And the reason for that is, what you don't want to encourage is people harvesting vetiver from areas that they would really install it to provide them with certain control, whether it's in terms of water, land stabilization, and so on. So what is encouraged is to really go about establishing vetiver nurseries. So we have established a nursery that will allow us to have plants or slips for use in whatever installation that we want to do. The nurseries that we tend to promote is nurseries where you plant the vetiver in rows, 3 feet between the rows, and maybe within a foot and a half along the rows. So that will allow you now to have sufficient material for installation wherever it is required. So that's just a few pictures to show a nursery that was established in Saint-Sauveur to support the installation of vetiver on these slopes and along the roads. Again, harvesting the slips are important because you need to start with good planting material if you want to have effective establishment. And you would see the gentleman preparing material. What's important to note, you want to remove excess roots. Normally, you would encourage to keep the roots within 5 cm, trim the roots down to 5 cm, as well as the slips to about 4 inches, 10 cm in length. And in most cases, it's encouraged to do pre-rooting. So that means you would be soaking the slips in water for about 3 to 5 days. And that will allow some roots to develop before you go ahead and establish. I also want to indicate that when you harvesting, it's important to take certain precaution in removing the clumps. So you use a sharp tool. Some cases people may use a desuckering tool. But the important thing is to remove the clump, and then you can separate the slips from the clump, as well as to undertake the final preparation of trimming the roots and the stalks.
Mr. Coipel, before you continue again, just please again, thank you. Just a bit. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All right, no problem.
Thank you.
All right. I'm moving right into the installation of Vetiver, whether it's along the slopes or along the road. What is encouraged that you want a very good start when you're establishing the Vetiver slips. And as such, it is important that we remove, in some case, the brush or the ground cover where you intend to establish the Vetiver strips. But important to note, you do not want to expose the soil. So you have to be, it's almost like strip cropping. So you want to remove or clear the area that you intend to establish the rows or the slips. And in some cases, you might do brushing. In some cases, you may use a shovel to remove the top vegetation where you intend to install the plants. And we also need to note that Vetiver needs full sunlight. So therefore, in some cases, you may have to remove some of the plants that may shade the slips when they are established. When you're going to establish on a hillside, it is good to use an A-frame to ensure that you're establishing the strips along the counter. And as you can see in the pictures, the picture on the left-hand side, you see they're erecting or mounting the A-frame. And the other pictures depict the rows that have been established. You notice there also some level of terracing. So you may find the use of Vetiver can also be combined with terracing, and that in itself will also hold the soil in place along the slopes. Just again, to just reiterate the aspect of establishing the slips. The slips are usually placed about 10 to 15 centimeters apart, and dependent on your measurement in terms of your degree of slope. In most cases, you'd find you planting at a distance between the rows can be anything between 3 feet to 10 or 15 feet, depending on the slope. However, what we encourage, and I'll speak a little bit about it later down, is when you're looking at the farming systems that are generally practiced. Like for instance, in Dominica, we normally do a lot of farming on the hillside. So we need to integrate the whole planting with that of where you're establishing your crops. So that in itself can be a factor when you determine the spacing between the rows. But for now, I want to focus specifically along the rows, where we suggest the establishment of the plants 10 to 15 centimeters. This picture really depicts the use of Vetiver along the roadsides. The picture on your far right on the screen is a newly cut road. And what you see here is the establishment of the vetiver strips alongside the road, because if not, the soil you see there at the edge of the road will eventually erode away because it is loose soil. And what we have seen very successful is once you use the vetiver grass, it actually holds that soil in place and it prevents any further erosion, because as you can see, it's much loose soil being placed at the edge of the newly cut road. And that's what you would see in most cases when you establish the vetiver grass along our roadsides. As well as we have seen a good combination of vetiver grass and other shrubs like crotons, hibiscus, because we normally use those as in our own beautification of our roadsides. But what we see is important is to use the vetiver grass, which will provide the protection in terms of erosion and loss of soil. And obviously that will fit well in the landscape as it relates to the choice of material along the roadsides. It's important that you give the slips a very good start once you establish them, and it is suggested that in the first 3 weeks that you ensure that there is sufficient water for the plants. That's why it's advisable to really establish your hedgerows in the rainy season or in the onset of the rainy season, so it will give the plants a very early start, so it will be fully established by the end of the rainy season. In the case where you are planting the grass where very little rain, it's advisable to provide watering as well as to fertilize the plants so they could have some early establishment. I think I've covered a bit in terms of the site establishment, so I'll go quickly for this. Here, we have also seen the use of the vetiver system on commercial or residential areas. We did actually supported a slope in a residential newly built residential area, and we again use the vetiver rows or hedgerows along the slopes that where there's some backfilling, and that again is to protect the further erosion or removal of that soil in that area. So we see it as a very effective tool in preventing land erosion even in residential or commercial areas. When we're looking at our cropping systems, we recognize that soil moisture is important, and we have seen the use of the vetiver leaves as a good mulch, as well as a weed suppressant. So you can actually use some material from vetiver in terms of when you actually pruning the plants, you can use the leaves as a mulch. And this last slide that I want to show is very important, because we're not saying that, especially for the small communities where the farmers practice hillside farming, we're not saying that you need to establish the entire area where farmers cannot use their land for their livelihood, but we want to be able to integrate the use of vetiver within the small farming systems. So what we are doing here is to really demonstrate how farmers can utilize and integrate the use of vetiver into their farming systems. We're getting benefits from both their crops as well as the vetiver grass. So that's very, very important that when we promoting the use of vetiver, that it must be well integrated into the farming system or into the landscape that best suits the farm, if we want to promote the adoption as a green engineering tool on the small holdings.